David's journey, from shepherd to king. Long ago in the land of Israel there lived a young shepherd boy named David. He was the youngest of 8 brothers. While his older brothers trained as warriors, David spent his days watching over the sheep, playing his harp, and writing songs of praise to God. Though he was young, David had a brave heart. He protected his sheep from lions and bears, trusting that God was always with him. One day, as David watched over his flock, he heard a rustling in the tall grass. A lion appeared, creeping toward the sheep. Without fear, David grabbed his sling, placed a smooth stone inside, and swung it fast. The stone flew through the air and struck the lion. The lion fled, and David stood strong, knowing that God had given him the courage to protect his sheep. David was no ordinary shepherd. He had great faith and a warrior's heart. One day, God sent the prophet Samuel to anoint the next king of Israel. Samuel arrived at the house of Jesse, David's father. Jesse brought out his 7 oldest sons, all strong and tall. But God spoke to Samuel and said, "Do not look at their appearance or their height, for the Lord looks at the heart." Samuel asked Jesse, "Are these all your sons?" Jesse replied, "There is still the youngest. He is tending the sheep." Samuel called for David, and when he arrived, God said, "This is the one. Anoint him." Samuel took a horn of oil and poured it over David's head. And from that day forward, the Spirit of the Lord was with David. Not long after, war broke out between Israel and the Philistines. A fearsome giant named Goliath, over 9 feet tall, stood before the Israelite army and challenged them. "Who will fight me? If he wins, we will be your servants, but if I win, you will serve us." The Israelite soldiers trembled in fear, but David, still just a young shepherd, stepped forward and said, "Who is this giant who dares to defy the army of the living God?" King Saul watched in amazement as David stood with confidence. "You are just a boy," Saul said, but David replied, "The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine." With only a sling and a stone, David faced the giant. Goliath laughed at him, but David picked up a smooth stone, placed it in his sling, and swung it fast. The stone flew through the air and struck Goliath in the forehead. The giant fell with a great thud, and the Philistines ran in fear. With one shot, the giant fell. David trusted in God, and God gave him victory. After his great victory, David was invited to King Saul's palace. His music was so beautiful that it could calm Saul's troubled spirit. But as David's fame grew, King Saul became jealous. He feared that David would take his throne. Saul watched David from the shadows, gripping his spear in anger. For years David ran for his life, but he never harmed King Saul, for he knew Saul was still God's chosen king. Finally, after many trials, David was anointed king of Israel. The people rejoiced as David captured Jerusalem and made it the capital. He led Israel with wisdom and courage. But even great kings make mistakes. David fell into sin when he took Bathsheba as his wife and sent her husband to battle, where he was killed. When David realized his wrong, he repented and cried out to God. Though David sinned, he was still a man after God's own heart because he turned back to God with true repentance. David ruled for 40 years and left a lasting legacy. He wrote many psalms, praising God through songs, and his son Solomon would become the next king. As David grew older, he sat on his throne and watched Solomon step forward. He knew that God's promise would continue through his family. "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." David's story is one of faith, courage, repentance, and God's unfailing love. From a humble shepherd to a mighty king, David's journey reminds us that God sees the heart, not just the outward appearance. What did you learn from David's story? Let us know in the comments. Do not forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing Bible stories. See you next time. And always remember, God has a purpose for you, just like he had for David.